April 1945. A column of German soldiers marches toward American lines near the Rhine, hands raised, weapons abandoned, but they are not surrendering because of tanks, not because of artillery, not because of airstrikes. Each man clutches a single piece of paper, a leaflet, bright red, roughly the size of a postcard. It bears the signature of General Dwight D. Eisenhower and the official seals of Britain and America. The German soldiers call it their admission ticket, their free pass for life, and by the war's end, 3 out of 4 German prisoners will be found carrying one. This is the story of the Passierschein, the British-designed safe conduct pass that became the most effective psychological weapon of the Second World War. A simple piece of paper that achieved what bombs could not: mass surrender without a single shot fired. The problem facing Allied commanders in 1944 was not how to defeat Germany militarily. That outcome was increasingly certain. The problem was how many Allied soldiers would die achieving it. Every fortified town meant casualties, every river crossing meant losses, every German soldier who chose to fight rather than surrender represented a potential Allied death, and German soldiers were fighting, even as the Reich collapsed around them, even as their cities burned and their supply lines disintegrated. Wehrmacht units continued to resist. The question that haunted Allied planners was simple. How do you convince an enemy to stop fighting? Conventional military logic offered only one answer: kill them until the survivors surrender. But British intelligence had identified something the bombs could not destroy: German psychology. Specifically, the German respect for official documents, for formal authority, for proper procedure, even in chaos, even in catastrophe, even in defeat. Germans like things done in an official and formal manner. That observation, drawn from years of studying the enemy, would become the foundation of Britain's invisible weapon. The organisation responsible was the Political Warfare Executive, PWE, established in September 1941 after 14 months of bureaucratic infighting. PWE operated from a country estate called Woburn Abbey in Bedfordshire. The location was chosen for secrecy and protection from German bombs. The cover name was the Political Intelligence Department. The mission was to break German will to fight without firing a single bullet. The man who understood German psychology better than perhaps anyone in Britain was Sefton Delmer. Born in Berlin in 1904 to Australian parents, Delmer spoke only German until age 5. He became the first British journalist to interview Adolf Hitler in 1931. By 1940, he was running PWE's black propaganda operations from Milton Bryan, creating fake German radio stations so convincing that an estimated 40% of German soldiers tuned in. Delmer's philosophy was brutally pragmatic. Do not appeal to ideology. Do not appeal to morality. Appeal to the inner pig dog, the Schweinhund. Appeal to self-interest. Appeal to survival. The safe conduct pass that emerged from this understanding was not merely a leaflet, it was a psychological precision instrument. The dimensions were carefully calculated at 5 by 8.5 inches, large enough to feel official, small enough to conceal. The paper quality matched German banknotes, deliberately chosen because Germans associated high-quality paper with legitimate documents. The colour went through multiple revisions based on prisoner interrogations before settling on bright red for maximum visibility. The design elements exploited German psychology at every level. The Great Seals of Britain and the United States dominated the top of the document, lending governmental authority. The SHAEF insignia provided military legitimacy. Banknote-style engraving made it resemble a stock certificate or bond, and at the bottom, the facsimile signature of General Eisenhower himself. PWE discovered through interrogations that German soldiers did not recognize Eisenhower's handwriting, so his name was spelled out in full. Every detail mattered. The text underwent 6 documented revisions. German was moved above English after prisoners reported confusion. A note clarified that the English was merely a translation. The phrase "valid for one or several bearers" was added after intelligence revealed that German soldiers were sharing passes. The unit surrender pass was printed at twice the size of individual passes. Sound psychology in dealing with Teutons, the designers noted. Production reached staggering scale. Waterlows of London, one of Britain's premier security printing firms, handled manufacturing. By May 1945, Allied leaflet operations consumed 80% of Britain's total offset printing capacity. The numbers are difficult to comprehend. Approximately 6 billion leaflets were distributed over continental Europe during the war. 6 billion, over 3 billion on northwestern Europe alone. Safe conduct passes were mixed at a ratio of 10 to 15% with other combat leaflets, meaning over 10 million Passierschein dropped monthly at peak operations. British leaflet operations actually began on the very first night of the war, September 3rd, 1939. 10 Armstrong Whitworth Whitley bombers took off and dropped approximately 5.4 million leaflets over Hamburg, Bremen and the Ruhr. The RAF called these nickel raids. While early efforts focused on news leaflets rather than surrender passes, they established the infrastructure and doctrine that would later deliver the Passierschein to German soldiers across Europe. The M-Balloon unit, headquartered at General Meadows in Kent, developed an ingenious supplementary delivery system. Hydrogen-filled paper balloons capable of staying aloft for 3 days drifted over German territory carrying leaflet payloads. December 1941 set the record at approximately 4.45 million leaflets delivered by balloon alone. The Germans could intercept aircraft. They could not intercept the wind. Now, before we examine what happened when these passes reached German hands, if you're finding this interesting, consider subscribing. It takes a second, costs nothing, and helps the channel continue producing these deep dives into British military innovation. Right, let us continue. Distribution methods varied by tactical situation. 80% of leaflets reached their targets via the American 8th Air Force, specifically the 406th Night Leaflet Squadron based at Cheddington. The Royal Air Force handled another 10%. Fighter bombers dropped 5% during tactical operations. And for frontline distribution, artillery shells were modified to carry leaflets instead of explosives. 105mm and 155mm shells burst over German positions, showering troops with paper rather than shrapnel. The effectiveness data, compiled by SHAEF and published in Army Talks in September 1945, tells a remarkable story. By October 1944, 77% of German prisoners taken by Allied forces had read one or more leaflets. On the Brest Peninsula, approximately 80% of captured Germans possessed leaflets. At Le Havre, 75% of 11,302 prisoners were found carrying them. One SHAEF report documented 3 Germans surrendering with only one leaflet between them, each man holding a corner of the precious document with one hand while raising the other in surrender. Individual incidents reveal how deeply the passes penetrated German lines. 44 men from the 256th Volksgrenadier Division deserted to a 3rd Army unit in a single day. Nearly all carried safe conduct passes. Another German soldier surrendered, claiming he possessed a document bearing General Eisenhower's personal signature. He believed the Supreme Commander had personally authorized his surrender. The ultimate validation came from the enemy himself. Joseph Goebbels, Nazi Minister of Propaganda, wrote in his diary in April 1945 that enemy propaganda is beginning to have an uncomfortably noticeable effect on the German people. Anglo-American leaflets are now no longer carelessly thrown aside but are read attentively. British broadcasts have a grateful audience. When the master of Nazi propaganda admits your propaganda is working, you have succeeded. German countermeasures revealed the extent of their concern. Severe penalties were imposed on soldiers who failed to surrender enemy propaganda to superiors. Civilians faced mandatory reporting requirements to police. Concentration camp prisoners caught with leaflets faced execution. Despite these measures, intelligence estimated that at least 1 in 7 leaflets were never handed in. Children proved especially successful targets because they did not know it was forbidden to read them. The Germans even produced parody safe conduct passes with altered text stating that the bearer wishes to go into captivity for the next 10 years and to betray his fatherland. The very existence of these parodies confirms how seriously German command took the threat. A captured German major in February 1945 declared the Passierschein the most effective Allied leaflet he had seen, noting that if captivity was really that good, it was much better to surrender than to fight on. The strategic impact extended beyond individual surrenders. Every German soldier who chose captivity over continued resistance was one fewer defender at the next river crossing, one fewer casualty for Allied medics to treat, one fewer bullet that might kill a British or American soldier. The leaflet achieved what artillery preparation could not. It convinced men to stop fighting before the battle began. Post-war analysis by military historians has debated exactly how many surrenders can be attributed directly to leaflets versus other factors like collapsing supply lines and inevitable defeat. The honest answer is that psychological warfare rarely works in isolation. What the evidence does show is that leaflets accelerated a process that might otherwise have cost thousands more Allied lives. A German soldier already questioning whether continued resistance was worthwhile needed only a plausible excuse to surrender. The Passierschein provided that excuse, an official document, a guarantee of humane treatment, permission, in effect, to stop fighting without dishonor. Comparative analysis reveals what made the British approach superior. German propaganda leaflets targeting Allied troops employed crude tactics, sexual themes about unfaithful wives, racial division attempts targeting African-American soldiers, anti-Semitic messaging. American analysis found German efforts range from clever and well done to crude, makeshift, and often in poor taste. More importantly, German propaganda faced a fundamental problem. It targeted an advancing high morale force. The British understood that psychological warfare works best against an enemy already questioning whether continued resistance is worthwhile. The PWE's legacy extends far beyond the Second World War. The principles developed at Woburn Abbey, the understanding that paper can be mightier than bombs when properly deployed, shaped psychological operations doctrine for decades. The simple insight that a German soldier would trust an official-looking document, even from his enemy, proved devastatingly accurate. Consider again those German soldiers marching toward American lines in April 1945, hands raised, clutching their bright red passes. They had been told that surrender meant death or slavery, that Allied captivity was a fate worse than fighting. The Passierschein told them something different. It told them in official language, on official paper, with official signatures, that they would be treated according to the Geneva Convention, that they would receive food, medical care and humane treatment. For soldiers who had been lied to by their own government for years, that simple promise of truth, delivered on paper that looked like it came from a bank rather than a battlefield, was enough. The bombs destroyed German cities, the tanks crossed German rivers, the infantry cleared German towns. But the leaflet, that genius British leaflet, convinced German soldiers that living as prisoners was better than dying as defenders. No weapon in the Allied arsenal achieved a better ratio of enemy neutralised to cost expended. 6 billion pieces of paper, 80% of British printing capacity, and a psychological understanding of the enemy that no bomb could replicate. British engineering excellence is usually measured in muzzle velocities and armour penetration. But at Woburn Abbey, British engineers of a different kind achieved something equally remarkable. They built a weapon from psychology and paper, and it worked.